I don't know your exact story, but I know this. No one ends up here by accident. I've been in that place of not knowing what's next, holding questions I couldn't answer, fighting battles no one else could see. And just like you, I stumbled across words that lifted me when I needed them most. That's why I'm speaking to you now. This might be that same kind of moment for you, the reminder that you're stronger than you think and perfectly placed for what comes next. Have you ever noticed that the moments you dread the most end up leaving the biggest mark on you? It's strange how something that feels like a wall in front of you can later be the very thing that opens a door. Think about it. Those days right before a big move, or when you're about to walk out of a stable job to try something totally uncertain, your stomach tightens, your hands shake, and your brain invents every possible disaster. That's fear showing up. It always seems to appear at the very edge of something new. The irony is, we often treat fear as a warning label that says, "Don't do this." If you've ever stood at the edge of a choice and felt your body pulling back, you've probably told yourself, that's your intuition saying stop. But a lot of the time, it's not actually danger, it's expansion. Your mind has this way of confusing unknown with unsafe. The moment you leave what feels familiar, even if that comfort zone hasn't been serving you for years, your brain sounds an alarm just to keep you in place. Think about the last time you had a job interview. Hours beforehand, you probably imagined yourself messing up answers, sweating in your shirt, or forgetting the interviewer's name. That anxiety can feel unbearable. And yet the funny thing is, that's usually the exact space where change is waiting. The tension isn't proof you're unqualified. It's that shift between the person you've been and the person you're about to become. That moment in the waiting room, where your heart pounds, isn't a stop sign. It's actually a doorway. What makes this even more interesting is that fear and excitement light up almost the same way in the brain. The racing heart, that energy flowing through your chest, the buzzing in your hands, that could either be panic or it could be anticipation. Your body doesn't always know the difference. What matters is how you tell the story to yourself. You might be seconds away from stepping into something that will reshape everything. But if you call those feelings fear, you'll freeze. If you call them excitement, you'll move. It's the same signal, just a different meaning. History is full of moments where people only leaped because fear backed them into a corner. An ordinary person faced a change they tried to resist, but once it was unavoidable, they discovered abilities they didn't even know they had. These aren't rare exceptions. They're reminders that the most powerful transformations usually begin with trembling hands and a lot of doubt. Take someone who spent years stuck in the same routine at a job that drained them. They convinced themselves it was safe, predictable, and the best they could ask for. Every time the thought of leaving came up, fear spoke louder. You'll regret it. You'll fail. You won't find something better. So, they stayed, until one day the choice was made for them. The job ended, and in the first shock, all they could feel was loss. But with space, they started following a different path, one they never imagined before. That so-called safe job disappearing wasn't the worst thing that ever happened. It was the best. If you look back on your own life, you'll probably spot pattern after pattern of the same lesson. The very things you ran from, moving out, ending a relationship, taking that first step into an uncertain project, later carried you to places you never would have reached otherwise. None of it felt brave in the moment. It felt like fear. But in truth, it meant something inside of you was already stretching far past the limits you thought you had. So next time that knot in your stomach shows up, you might want to ask yourself, what if this isn't trying to stop me? What if this is proof I'm exactly where growth happens? Once you begin to see fear as a signal instead of a red light, it turns from something that blocks you into something that guides you. It marks the moment what you've prayed for, worked for, or quietly hoped for is starting to break through, even if you can't see it yet. Fear, then, isn't evidence you're in danger. It's evidence transformation is already here. And if that's true, then what's really unfolding in those silent, uncertain seasons when life seems to pause? That's where timing comes in, and why learning to trust it may be the most important shift of all. Ever wonder why some chapters of life feel like waiting rooms with no clear direction? You show up every day. You try to do the right things, but it feels like nothing is moving. Job applications get ignored. The relationship you thought would last forever suddenly doesn't feel right anymore. The big plan you imagined for your life just doesn't seem to line up. It's like standing in a hallway where all the doors are locked and no one's handing you the key. Those seasons can make you question if something is broken in you, or if life is somehow working against you. Here's the strange part. Delays don't always mean denial. Sometimes they're the exact space where the real work is happening, even if you can't see it. It's like when you put a seed in the ground. Days go by, and you keep staring at the soil, thinking nothing is happening. But underneath the surface, the roots are digging in, getting stronger, preparing for growth. The stronger those roots become in the dark, the more steady the plant will be when it finally breaks through the surface. That quiet stretch of nothingness was never empty. It was preparation. Think back to a time you felt stuck. Maybe you were pushing hard to get into a program or land the perfect job, but rejection emails kept piling up. It's easy to assume those doors closing meant you failed. But now, looking back, can you see how those forces might have redirected you? Maybe they pushed you toward a training or skill you wouldn't have touched otherwise. Maybe they simply gave you more time to mature before bigger responsibilities came into play. What felt like wasted time was actually building a version of you that could hold the life you were about to step into. Setbacks hit in every category of life. Someone thinks a relationship ending marks the end of their chances at love. Someone else sees a business fail and believes it proves they were foolish to even try. The immediate reaction is pain, disappointment, sometimes even shame. But later, sometimes much later, you can piece together a much different story. That breakup you thought shattered your world might have saved you from years of living out of alignment. That failed idea might have broken your ego, but built your resilience, and eventually led you to the thing that worked. What looked like an ending was actually a reroute. Trusting timing doesn't mean you sit around waiting for a miracle. It's not about being passive or giving up responsibility. It's more about how you hold yourself in the space between where you are and where you want to go. You keep moving, you stay open, you take steps where you can, but you refuse to force doors that aren't opening yet. It's the practice of adjusting when life shifts, of listening when situations are pointing you in another direction. That's not laziness, it's alignment. Ask yourself something real. If you had been given everything you demanded exactly when you wanted it, would you have been ready? Most people can admit that if their biggest dreams had dropped into their hands too early, they would have fumbled it. They didn't yet have the patience, the skills, or the maturity to hold it. In that sense, the delay wasn't punishment, it was protection. The wait was building you into the kind of person who can carry the weight of the very things you've been asking for. The lesson is that you're not late, and you're not being left behind. Trusting timing doesn't put you behind anyone else's pace. Instead, it lines you up with the exact moment where things are ready to unfold. Seeds don't break the ground before their roots are ready, and rivers don't cut through rock without years of steady pressure. You may not like the waiting, but that doesn't make it wasted. It makes it vital. Because if the quiet, still seasons are shaping you this much, it might mean even the hardest setbacks weren't mistakes at all. They might be the hidden guidance you didn't know you were looking for. Why do we only realize in hindsight that the biggest detours were exactly the steps we needed? In the middle of it, losing your way feels like chaos. You thought you knew where things were headed, and suddenly you don't. You start to question yourself. You start to ask if you're doing life wrong. Maybe you thought school would give you a clear path, but the major you chose left you empty. Maybe you poured everything into a career only to wake up one morning and know you couldn't do it anymore. Or maybe it was personal. like the shock of a breakup that you thought you'd never recover from. Those moments pull the ground out from under you and leave you scrambling for answers. It's easy to treat that kind of disorientation as failure. You look at your life and it doesn't line up with what you planned, so it feels like something's been lost. But here's what's strange. When you lose direction, you start to see what actually matters. The fog strips away the illusions that kept you clinging to old plans. The breakup, as painful as it was, forced you to admit that the relationship wasn't as whole as you wanted to believe. The job you lost left you facing the truth that you hadn't been happy there for years. Even though it hurts, that clarity is something stability rarely gives you. Think about it like wandering in a forest. You take the wrong turn, and before you know it, you're deep in the trees with no idea where the trail went. Panic builds because you're not sure if you'll find your way back. But every misstep forces you to learn. You start paying attention to landmarks. You scan the light through the branches. You notice details you ignored before. Each wrong direction eventually pulls you toward the right one. The wrong turns feel like mistakes, but they sharpen your awareness until you finally stumble back into the clearing. And when you hit that clearing, you realize that without the detour, you might have never learned how to notice at all. Resilience grows the same way. People talk about bouncing back, but the truth is, resilience works more like a muscle. The first big loss knocks you off your feet. It takes you months to get your balance back. The next one still hurts, but it doesn't take as long. Over time, you almost carry an inner memory of how to recover. It doesn't mean setbacks stop hurting, but it does mean you stop doubting your ability to heal. The process of losing direction, as painful as it is, builds strength you couldn't develop by living in a straight, predictable line. There are countless stories of people who thought their world ended the day they lost a job. Imagine someone who set up their whole life around a steady career. Every bill, every plan, every ounce of security tied to that paycheck. Then one day, it's gone. At first, all they can hear is panic. They replay every mistake, every what if that could have saved it. But space has a way of changing the story. Maybe that forced ending became the push they needed to chase the side project they'd been quietly passionate about. That job loss, which felt like disaster, became the trigger for an entirely new chapter, one that finally felt alive. In hindsight, the collapse wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Here's the thing. Losing direction is never random. It forces attention to what isn't working, almost like life's way of removing pieces that don't fit anymore. You might resist and try to cling to the old, but sooner or later you recognize that the detour was aligning you with something you couldn't get to on your own. That's why, looking back, most people can trace the path to their biggest breakthroughs, straight through the times they felt most lost. But when you're standing in the middle of that confusion, it may not be proof that you've gone off track. It may be guidance in disguise. What feels like wandering can actually be a hidden navigation system, one you only understand once you've walked far enough to see the bigger picture. And if fear, timing, and these twists in the road are all signs, then maybe the fact that this video has shown up right now isn't an accident either. You are not lost. You might feel uncertain, you might not see the full map, but you're standing in the exact place you're supposed to be right now. Life rarely shows the whole picture in advance, and maybe that's the point. It teaches you to trust, step by step. So trust this moment. Notice the subtle signs showing up around you. Pay attention to what keeps pulling at your heart, and move forward with quiet confidence. The timing will reveal its purpose. And maybe, just maybe, this video appeared because your breakthrough is closer than you've ever imagined.